My next guest is Michael Berube. He is Deputy Assistant Secretary for Sustainable Transportation in the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy at the Energy Department. EERE's mission is to drive the research, development, and deployment of innovative technologies that will help transition Americans to a 100% clean energy economy no later than 2050. He brings over 25 years of experience from the auto industry. Welcome, Michael.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I guess first things first, as we implement all of these bills that are expected to help with electric vehicles and other sustainable transportation, what is DOE's role in that implementation?
Well, we're playing a pretty big role in a number of key aspects. Certainly in the infrastructure bill, there are just tremendous opportunities for new grants that we've already started to put out and will continue to put out to help drive domestic manufacturing of critical minerals and the processing of those minerals and production of batteries here. There are some that are specific to batteries. There are some that are a little more general to clean energy technologies, including electric vehicles and batteries. So we lead a lot of that work, and we certainly support other parts of the government, Department of Transportation and places where they have work, and also Treasury Department. Should also note that one of the key aspects of our transition to electric vehicles is helping to build consumer confidence around EV charging. So we have a new joint office of energy and transportation that was stood up between DOE and DOT to help really bring the two agencies together to bring kind of the technical expertise and the experience that DOE has on electric vehicles and EV charging, along with DOT and their substantial experience, obviously working with all the state DOTs and deploying the EV charging infrastructure all over.
Got it. And so on those EV chargers, how can we deploy those? How do you do that in a way that's most effective? What is the most effective strategy for that? And how do we make sure that that is both effective and equitable?
Yeah, well, those are the two key things, right? Effective, I would maybe add resilient and equitable. Look, I think one of the first things that we need to do is we need to give people confidence, which means we need to have enough coverage that someone is comfortable driving on long distance trips. And we know long distance trips represent a relatively small amount of trips people take, but you need to do it when you need to do it. So building out a national network, right? Coast to coast. So think your interstates, your major US highways. So that is I think mission number one, but that's not sufficient alone. We then need to be building up capacity. So if that's covered, we then need to build capacity where people are living and working. So think about charging in and around communities where most of the driving activity actually happens, and also supporting people with home charging. We still think that 80 to 85% of all the electrons, if you will, that people use for their fuel in electric vehicles will come from when they charge their vehicle at home or where they park their car overnight. There are some people that don't have electricity where they currently park their car. Maybe they do curbside, maybe they live in an apartment building. So helping support that, helping to reduce costs, helping to reduce bureaucracy, providing better templates for local communities will be a key part. Building out community-based charging. There's a substantial portion, $2.5 billion in discretionary grants that DOT has at the joint office. We're working with them on, and then building out the corridors where there's $5 billion in from the infrastructure law. So a lot of work to be done, but I think we've got a lot of the key ingredients there.
And so of the charging infrastructure that's needed, if there's going to be widespread deployment, how much is covered by that $7.5 billion and how much more investment is needed? And if there is more, should that come from the private sector? Should that come from Congress, or a little bit of both?
We've always said that the federal funds will not be the total fund, right? The goal of the federal money is to not necessarily build out the entire fueling network needed, and certainly not to supplant private sector investments, but it's really to help support, to catalyze, provide a jumpstart. And you mentioned equitable. Part of the role of the federal funds is to help fill the needs early on where maybe private sector dollars won't go, where utilization rates might be low initially, and to help fill that in. So it's definitely a combination of public and private sector together. You're seeing tremendous investments by the private sector already. We have close to 150,000 charging ports already. Some of that was catalyzed 10 plus years ago with the Recovery Act and funds that DOE spent then, but there's certainly been a ton of private sector investment since then. So you're going to continue to see big investments by the private sector, but the public sector, the investments we're making will be important, but also the proposed standards that we put out to kind of standardize what a EV charger with federal dollars should look like, how it should operate. That also helps provide some certainty for industry as they're putting chargers out there.
I just want to jump here about Cusack. Michael, thanks for joining us. I have a reader question I think is interesting. You talked about communities before. This is from Sarah Malayer, hopefully I'm saying that right, Senior Advisor, Public Policy and Research, American Federation for the Blind. And this is the question. EVs will lead the way to AVs. What is happening now to ensure EVs, charging infrastructure, and AVs are accessible to all people with disabilities?
Look, I think, as you mentioned, automated vehicles, one of the promises, if you will, right? One of the hopes is that they can provide a new avenue of mobility for people that currently don't have it, including the blind and others, elderly and other things. So I think electrification, as you said, we believe, ultimately help with automated vehicles. We don't necessarily think all automated vehicles have to be electrified, but just having that will be important. And then I think it'll just be important that any federal dollars spent, certainly, that we address accessibility issues and take that into account. Working with stakeholder groups, which is certainly what we and the Department of Transportation has tremendous experience here, right? In working with disabled groups and understanding the range of different accessibility needs. So I'm sure they will continue to do that.
Just on, you have to educate the public. That's a big part of your job. What kind of frustrates you the most, Michael, as far as kind of educating people? Because there are a lot of misperceptions out there.
I spent a lot of years, as I think Rachel mentioned at the beginning, in the automotive industry, and I have learned that first, the consumer is always right. Number two, the consumer only knows what they know. So today, it doesn't necessarily frustrate me, but partly I try to help educate people. Consumers have never experienced EVs, right? They have a lot of uncertainty about that. That was true with safety technology that they hadn't experienced, but once they did, it was game changing for them. And I think that will be the exact same thing for electric vehicles. So the fact that 250 miles of range is a lot of range. The fact that you don't have to go to a gas station to plug in. You can just plug in at home, and it takes about 30 seconds to plug in, another 20 to unplug, and you're done. And that can be actually really freeing and liberating. So I think just getting people's experience there, they will love the experience of driving the vehicles as well. I think the other thing that is just this unknown that we've got to educate consumers more on is the tremendous cost savings, right? And I get it. Consumers see today the upfront cost is higher, but that upfront cost is going to go down. It has come down a lot, which is why you see so many automakers coming out with models that will continue to drop substantially. And then the savings, just looking up last week, I think at a national average, it costs about $47 to fill up a typical internal combustion engine vehicle. And that was closer to $17 if you were going the same distance on an electric vehicle charging at home, and about $24, $25 at a higher price fast charger. So that plus, $6,000 in maintenance and repair savings over the life of the vehicle. So those are pretty real things. But we just got to get that word out there, and people just got to start experiencing it more.
And I hear you on the cost savings at the pump, but I imagine a lot of consumers might struggle with the initial sticker price nonetheless. With that in mind, how close are we, or when might we reach cost parity, on the initial price between gas-powered vehicles and electric vehicles? And is there anything the federal government can be doing or should be doing to help speed that along?
Well, there is a lot we are doing and can and should be doing. So, here at DOE in particular, we have been leading the work, really, not just in the U.S., but globally, on battery development for decades. And pretty much all the batteries you see in your laptops, your phones, that core technology in electric vehicles started with DOE work. So we are continuing to develop new chemistries that don't rely on these critical minerals, which will help us get a more secure supply chain, but also lower cost. Our best crystal ball, and it is crystal ball when you're doing R&D, but we think that around 2028, 2029, that is when our cost target for batteries will result in that electric vehicle and internal combustion engine vehicle being pretty much at parity. That will depend a little bit on what what range and how much batteries you put in, but that's, we generally are targeting 300 type miles of range or EV, which is what most people seem to want. And there'll certainly be some that have longer range than that as well. But we think, before 2030, you'll hit that cost parity, which at that point, imagine if you have close to cost parity up front and all the operating savings. That's why electric vehicles can really be a liberating piece. Because, right now, transportation is the second highest expense for a typical American household. So if we can cut that cost, that is a huge equity improvement as well for many people.
Could you speak a little bit more to that research that you're doing and how might those batteries differ from the batteries that we see in electric vehicles right now?
Sure. We work, at the fundamental battery chemistry level, as well as the manufacturability. So today's, batteries are made with nickel, manganese, cobalt, and lithium. In the future, they may have be made of more materials like sulfur and silicon, replacing some of those critical minerals with really earth-abundant minerals. Today, they have a liquid electrolyte. It's kind of a liquid poured in between the anode and cathode. In the future, we think those might be solid state, which will help really improve reduce the cost, improve the battery density, improve safety as well. Although I will say today, electric vehicles, by all data information, are extremely safe. But anything you can do to improve that is even better as well.
And can you also speak about public transit? How are the funds in the bipartisan infrastructure bill being spent in terms of public transportation? And could the U.S. have a train system that is similar to Europe someday, and what would that take?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, Rachel, right? Because, while we're talking a lot about electric vehicles, delivering the mobility future that we want, right, is one that will be net zero greenhouse gas. I mean, we just released a major blueprint across DOT and DOE and EPA and HUD and the White House to literally lay that out. And part of that is not just cars, right, but is our public transit system. That includes our buses and subway systems. And it also includes, rail for freight, moving freight long distances as well, and also long distance rail for people. We are going to need to improve those systems, certainly reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from those. So there's tremendous amount of infrastructure dollars that are available that Federal Transit Agency has started to put out to basically move buses to zero emission. Now, that could be hydrogen or battery electric. There's interest in both of those and activity in both of those. Electrifying school buses, a little different, but we move more people in school buses if you think about public transit than we do in all the other public transit combined. I recently heard in the stats. Not mine, so I can't vouch for it, but when you think about that, that's pretty interesting as well. But we have to, while there are far more trips done in personal cars, and we don't expect that you're going to all of a sudden move the public from personal cars to public transit, we have to recognize that in our urban areas and even in our our rural areas, public transit plays a critical role for much of the population. And we need to make sure we have a system for them that is clean, that is cost effective, and that really works well. So maybe we can do things like more mobility on demand and smaller vehicles that are electrified rather than large diesel buses combined with other first mile, last mile services. So there's a lot of things, I think, in new mobility, innovation, and technology. You were talking in your previous section about automation and connected vehicles. I think one of the roles for automation and connectivity is trying to help improve the experience and really the options in our public transit system as well.
Michael, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate talking.
Well, and that brings us to the end of our program. A big thank you to Hyundai and to all of you for watching. And for any of you that missed any of these conversations, this afternoon we will have video from the event up on our website, thehill.com, shortly. I'm Bob Cusack and my co-anchor, Rachel Frazin. Hope you enjoyed the program. Have a great day.